This is the Realme 16 Pro, and when I got this phone, I thought to myself, great, another boring mid-ranger with the look at me specs. But the more I used it, the more I realized that this phone has one incredibly great feature and one insanely baffling decision. So in this review, we're going to break down why this phone could be really great, but did something really not so great. Let's get into it. Starting off at the rear, that really funky, cool looking camera design on the 16 Pro houses dual lenses, 200 megapixel main, 8 megapixel ultra wide, and let's break those lenses down for you step by step. But before we do, actually, one of the weird quirks with this phone is the OS optimization for the actual lens switching from the main to the ultra wide is incredibly slow. Like, it'll take a good 2 seconds to switch, which is really, really odd. If you then were to add filters, for example, onto it, for example, if you want to take a black and white shot or a vintage film look, it again is really, really slow. Maybe that can be changed in the software support, but with the update we recently got, that was still an issue. But those main lenses, 200 megapixel main lens, in terms of that, it is a very capable lens with a natural color profile used here, and the output is very good with nicely detailed images and good overall sharpness. There is no over-processing or highly saturated colors here. Images retain a lot of that natural look with colors turned up just a smidge, even up to 4x, which uses some AI processing and that kicks in, it still produces some really good results. Video at 4K 30 mirrors the main lens in delivering really nice colors and detail in not over processing. It's not the best at this price point, but it is still pretty good. And then video stabilization is good here. Some judders, I would say, but overall it still looks really good. Video on the ultra wide is actually decent and very usable for sure. And the same can be said for the images as well. They aren't very detailed or sharp, but they are good enough and usable for things like social media, for example. Moving from the rear to the front, you get a stunning 6.7 inch 7.8 inch FHD plus AMOLED display with 144 Hz with up to 6500 nits of peak brightness, and the genuinely output here is stellar. Rich in detail and contrasting visuals as you'd expect from this panel are great. Even if you ramp up the brightness to full, it still looks really, really good. And then on the design front, it's another space where the 16 Pro does really, really well. It weighs just 192 grams and is 7.8 millimeters thin. And that combined with this really nice matte finish, which doesn't leave fingerprints, although there are some on here, feels really, really premium in the hand. And although it is a somewhat big phone, it does sit in the hand really comfortably and feels really nice too. Continuing on the design and display front, durability. This phone gets IP66, IP68, and IP69K ratings. So that means if you were to drop this in hot water, it'll work absolutely fine. If you submerge this in water, it'll work fine. Or if in this instance you spray it with water, it will still work absolutely fine, including the display when wet will operate almost as normal. The performance aspect of the 16 Pro is a bit of a mixed bag because when you run this through 3D Mark's Lifestyle Extreme test and you run that really intense benchmark, you actually get incredible results in terms of throttling because it is basically none, which is pretty sick. But then when you use the OS itself, it runs really, really well and it's packed with really useful and great AI features. Things like AI landscape, for example, if it finds an image is slightly blurry, it'll tidy it up, add a layer of vibrancy and fill in those layers really, really nicely, and it doesn't even look AI at all, which is great. The other useful feature that I found using a lot was within the Notes app, which is text-to-speech, which legitimately never got it wrong at all. It's the closest, I would say, or basically mirrors that found on the Pixel devices when it comes to text-to-speech. I'm testing the Realme 16 Pro to try and get a better understanding of just how good this phone is. That costs around £349. What's interesting though is that the actual phone itself and the AI in the Note app is very impressive. What I would say though, the functionality in AI is really in depth, but not at the same level in terms of its features as something like the Poco X8 Pro, which has pretty much everything that the flagship spec does. If you recall at the start of this video, we mentioned like something really, really great, which is coming up, and then something really baffling. Well, here's the baffling bit, because the 16 Pro gets a Dimensity 7300 processor, which you're probably thinking, what's the big deal, Shaz? It's a decent mid-range processor. It's actually downgrade from last year's, because last year's 15 Pro got a 7 Gen 4 CPU, which means if you run this through Antutu's benchmarks, it actually is a 40% downgrade in overall performance, which is absolutely huge. And you can feel it at times when you're using the phone. The OS sometimes does judder and crash a little bit every now and then. And we've already shown the example with switching from the main lens to the ultra wide and then being able to use those filters. All of that, I think, is because of the CPU's lack of power versus the previous gen. Now, that downgrade in the CPU is a big shame because there's other aspects, and one huge win that we mentioned at the start of this review, and that's its battery. It's over 7,000 plus milliamp hours. And to show you how great it is, when we ran this through 3D Mark's Lifestyle Extreme test, it actually only used 3% of its battery, when normally we see 10+%, which is pretty sick. And again, even temperatures are pretty well maintained throughout, which is great. So this phone we use consistently for a number of days, and it worked incredibly well. In fact, when we had this phone playing Call of Duty Mobile in GT mode, it only consumed a single percent, and that was with 60+% battery on, locked in 120 frames per second, and the sound maxed out.
Changing mag, cover me. Contact with enemy.
Hard point identified. Capture the objective.
Enemy down. Reloading.
Hard point is ours.
Changing mag, cover me. Enemy contact.
Hard point contested.
Reloading, cover me.
Hard point contested.
I got shot. Enemy down.
To give you an even better understanding of the battery on this phone is to give you what our day looked like. So we took this out and we took a ton of photos and videos on this phone. We gamed a little bit, we streamed a bit of content and Spotify, and we read some articles, and it barely lost more than 5% of its battery throughout that use. So if you do take this out on a daily for yourself, you're gonna need to recharge this phone maybe once every couple of days. And that just shows you in this price category, it's probably close to, if not the best battery performance we've seen. So where do we land on this 16 Pro? Well, it does a lot really good. It's got a stunning display, incredible battery, and the main lens does output really, really good images. But that downgrade in the CPU, you can feel almost right away throughout the time that we used it. We got the odd crash, drop off, frame rate judder, and again, the camera system and the UI didn't work as well as we'd expect. Plus, at roughly $349, there are others in this space that do a better job. Things like the Poco X8 Pro and our upcoming review of the Nothing 4A, both sit at around £350. Both will offer more for the same price. But if you wanted the best battery phone in terms of performance in this category, around $350 and lower, then it is the Realme 16 Pro. But do us a favor, drop us a comment below your thoughts on this 7,000 mAh battery phone. Would you buy it for that reason, or would you default elsewhere? And if you found this review helpful, drop us a like, comment, and consider subscribing, as it really supports the channel. Until the next one, as always, we out.